Coming soon to own on
YouTube
video
and
and DVD.
Twitch. The most ridiculous riots in history. Now, obviously, there's a lot of justified riots in history, but there's also a lot of bullshit riots that happened throughout history. Enough of this yapping. Let's go ahead and get straight to it.
History's most ridiculous riots. Usually, when you shout out an N-word in public, it can cause some severe backlash, and things weren't much different over 1,000 years ago. Way
Really?
back in the humble year of 532 in Constantinople, the capital of the East Roman Empire,
532?
now known as the Byzantine Empire, some ancient stuff was about to hit the ancient fan. The number one thing to do in your boring life as a citizen of the Byzantine Empire was to waddle on down to the Hippodrome, the city's main sports arena. There, you could watch men race their little horsey carts against each other in the sport of chariot racing. The sport wasn't just one of entertainment, but one of politics as well. There were 4 teams or factions that you could get behind. You got your Rusata Reds, the Albata Whites, the Veneti Blues, and finally the Prasini Greens.
Hey, what side y'all on? What side y'all on? I'm going with the Blues. Well, where y'all going?
The Reds and the Whites eventually got absorbed into the Greens and Blues and thus began a 2-party dispute. The Greens were the team of the lower working class, people like craftsmen, artisans, merchants, or laborers. On the other end of the economic spectrum were the Blues, the uppity rich folk. So the well-to-do
I don't know if I like the team I just picked because it's like the people with the talent are on the green side, but the people with the motion are on the blue side. It's like I got the motion, but look at them. I know they don't got no talent for it. They just got motion.
loved the Blues and the limited means favored the Greens, a natural rivalry. Frequently hosting these chariot races was the emperor himself, and the flavor of the day around this time was Emperor Justinian I, a pretty energetic emperor praised for his various judicial reforms, but also execrated for his harsh taxation policies. Execrated. Here's a new word for you.
To dislike and criticize someone or something very strongly, she became extricated the hypocritical values of her upper class upbringing. Wow. You learn something
You
new
see,
every
a
day.
few months back, a smaller riot had broken out after one particularly heated chariot race, which really wasn't all that uncommon, to be honest. I mean, look at what happens to cities when sports teams win or lose. Some things never change. Anyway, this
Philly won that Super Bowl and the whole city went to turn to Gotham.
particular riot resulted in a few rude dudes getting their noggins knocked. And by noggins knocked, I mean their whole skulls caved in. 2 men were
Ooh.
arrested, one green fella and one blue fella. Understandably, they were both charged with murder and sentenced to death. But luck had other plans in store for them. After a freak collapse of the executioner's scaffolding and thus no other
Wow.
formal way to separate soul from body, the prisoners were instead imprisoned
Wait, is that why they used to hang people? Because they believed it separate the soul and body?
for their crimes, but this didn't really sit too well with the blue and green supporters who wanted the men freed. The lack of mercy really put their tunics in a twist, and they were not quiet about it. Emperor Justinian, who was busy negotiating peace with the Persians, didn't really have time for all of this shit, so as a band-aid solution, he told everyone to take a chill pill and planned to host another, more fantastical chariot race to calm everyone down. But that was a mistake. The worst thing you can tell an angry person to do is to calm down. It rarely works. In January of 532, the day for the chariot race came, and the once divided Greens and Blues now had a common enemy. Since the Emperor was almost always present at events like this, both Blues and Greens would often take it upon themselves to use the time between races to shout political suggestions to the Emperor while they still had his attention. This could be
Y'all really thought that would work? Because, like, in like in all honesty, like, what if you say something as a, like me as an emperor? What if you say something to me and that shit piss me off, and I just get you slime? Like, I'm like, I point to you in the crowd, the guards they come grab you, they take you out. Next thing you know, you in the ditch. I don't know if that's the best idea to just yell at your emperor.
something simple like lowering the cost of goods or demanding the removal of particularly provocative politicians. Well, the topic of trouble in today's turmoil was that of the aforementioned prisoners, both sides united calling for the freedom of the men. But these demands fell on deaf ears, so they yelled louder. The crowd chanted Nika, a phrase translating to the tune
Hold on, hold on, hold on. What you mean, nigga?
Tune of win, victory, or conquer. This was typically shouted by a winning team at the end of a race, but this time it took on a new meaning, and it was directed at the Emperor. But these words would also remain ignored, so the crowd offered two more options, fucking A and fucking B. The crowd leapt from the stands and charged
No
towards the
way
palace,
they charged
attacking
him.
the prison holding the two men and setting them free before burning it all down. The city spiraled out of control for 7 whole days, with fire and property damage destroying nearly half the capital city. Justinian had
Holy.
conceded to a lot of the rowdy
I'm not gonna lie though. That was low key. I don't know about burning the city though, cause y'all were complaining about taxes, and you gonna destroy the city that's gonna get paid with more taxes. He gonna charge you even more.
crowd's initial demands, like firing 3 of his top guys, but that didn't stop the destruction. They wanted his head. At the end of his
Oh.
rope, Justinian found himself cornered and was forced into hiding. He continued to cower until his wife, Empress Theodora, calmly offered some kind
shit.
words of encouragement.
Stop fucking crying!
The empress had
Oh, shit.
convinced him to stay and face his subjects head on. It was better to die as an emperor than to live life in exile. And
Hold on. Why my wife trying to get me slimed out? She talking about, hey, you better die. You better die like a man. I'm like, what? Why my wife trying to get me slimed out?
he took that advice. Sort of. He requested the rioters gather in the Hippodrome in order to propose an end to the madness. They agreed. But entering the arena wasn't the emperor, it was a general and a commander and thousands of soldiers. The gates were slammed
Oh.
shut and secured, starting the rather one-sided negotiation. With one command, the soldiers indiscriminately slaughtered nearly 30,000 unarmed citizens, putting
I'm not gonna lie. He wildin'. He wildin', gang. You can't kill 30,000 civilians just
an
like
end
that.
to the Nika riots. In the end, Emperor Justinian justified the bloodshed to consolidate power and strengthen his grip on the Byzantine Empire, ruling as one of the greatest emperors
I'm not gonna lie. If I hear about this, I'm scared. No, what empire my fault. You know, hey, you got it, big bro. Don't kill me. Hey, that was them niggas. Don't kill me.
of the age. He just had to, make everyone scared to question him. Everyone knows the best combo besides chicken and parmesan is a good old game of sports ball and a medically inadvisable amount of alcohol. Slamming down
Hell
1
yeah.
to 10 beers with your buddies while your favorite teams are all touching each other. Yeah, that's never ended badly for
Yo,
anyone.
come on.
Oh, well, just a game. Well, wouldn't you believe it? It caused quite the ruckus back in 1974. An extremely poorly
74.
planned promotion by the Cleveland Indians was 10-cent beer night. A night where, you guessed it, you could buy a usually 65-cent beer for just 10 cents a pop. As expected,
Woo. Oh yeah, niggas was getting blacked out drunk.
this wouldn't be without limits. On paper. You see, each guest could only buy up to 6 beers at a time, but the promotion failed to limit
6 at a time? I could buy 6 at a time? Yo. I don't think whoever came up with that idea knew how strong alcohol can get. If I drunk 6 bottles at a time, and if I could come back after that.
the number of transactions per person, so you and your friends could get completely blasted for just $1 or $2. Now, to be fair, the promotional beer was light, only about 3.2 ABV, but when you're double fisting them things down, the math starts to add up. If
Yeah.
that wasn't enough of a catalyst for a rowdy rumble, the Cleveland Indians were facing a rematch against the Texas Rangers after having just lost a few nights prior. Thanks to the 10-cent beer night promotion, attendance was near a record high, over 25,000 patrons.
25,000 people. Probably 15 to 20,000 of them are blacked out drunk. Oh my god.
Double the usual turnouts. The game began and the Rangers quickly took a commanding 5-1 lead, which pissed off the Cleveland fans. You're out. Fuck! The crowd, after slamming down liquid courage for a few innings, started getting bold. The shenanigans
Nah.
began when a fan whipped out his own slugger and dashed across the field.
Yo.
There were a few more cases of relatively harmless indecent exposure, but things soon got out of hand, with Cleveland fans now pelting the other team's players with food scraps and beer bottles, and even some of the more sneaky guests started shooting off firecrackers in the stands in the
What?
field. All of these sober
Nah, they
folks,
wildin'.
realizing that things were about to get nasty, packed up and left before being brought into a brawl. At the bottom of the ninth, Cleveland made a comeback, tying up the game 5-5, but one final disorderly degenerate was about to be the spark of an explosive riot. A 19-year-old fan stormed the field in an attempt to yoink a Ranger player's hat. Not very smart.
Come on, bro.
The fan ended up catching a Spartan kick to the sternum. Now fearing that his own player had been attacked, the Rangers' manager took to the field, bat in hand. Cleveland fans flooded the field and attacked the Rangers, hurling fists, rocks, bottles, chairs, each other, whatever they could get a hold of. Both teams were now fending off all of the fans, but luckily managed to escape the chaos, fleeing within the stadium. But in their absence, the rambunctious rascals destroyed the field, stealing bases and trashing the dugouts.
Oh,
Well,
nah.
looks like I made it to third base one way or another. Right, babe?
The riot lasted just over 20 minutes before police came in and broke it all up, making 9 arrests. All in all, there were no serious injuries and the game was forfeited to the Rangers. Just over 1 month later, a second 10-cent beer night was held to the tune of
They ran it back after that? After all that happened, they was like, yeah, well, let's run it back.
over 43,000 attendees.
Oh, no, they're wilding. They're trying to get somebody killed. Bro, they're trying to get somebody killed. Did they storm the field with 20,000 less people last time? And now you want to add more people and do it again?
But this time, only 2 drinks per person were permitted. No problems occurred. It may have also been due to the fact that there were about 200 cops on site to help maintain order.
Toronto Circus riot.
Back in 1855, the city of Toronto in Ontario, Canada, was really up and coming. Boasting a thriving population of 40,000 syrup sippers, the city had a lot to offer, like 152 taverns, 203 beer shops, and most importantly, dozens and dozens of brothels. Beautiful babes willing to get silly with your willy for the right price. But another form of entertainment was coming to town, the circus. The American SB House Star Troop Menagerie and Circus, to be precise. Acrobats, performers, animals, and of course, the iconic clowns. The show was in town for just 2 nights. After the end of the first night, many of the clowns took the night off from their slapstick comedy to consensually slap their sticks in women's faces at a local brothel.
Oh, they
Problem
trying to get
was,
serious.
they chose the wrong one. This particular establishment was the go-to spot for the local volunteer firefighting brigade. So all night, the men fought for the attention of hardworking women so they could get their dunks sunked. The thing you have to
Bro, come on, bro. What am I looking at?
The thing you have to remember is, these were firefighters and clowns of yore, not the type that we see today. For instance, firefighters back in the day were in competition with each other. When there was a fire, they rushed to see who could get there first and get the payout. This often resulted in fire departments banging away at each other while the fire blazed on in the background. In
Come
short,
on.
these men knew how to fight, and so did the clowns, because the clowns beat up the firefighters so they could get
Nah, bro. Imagine getting your ass beat by a clown, though. Like, that's a different level of embarrassment.
beat off in peace and quiet. 2 firefighters were reported as seriously injured, having to get carted off to be treated for their wounds. But unlike the brothel workers, these firefighters wouldn't be taking this lying down. These clowns were outsiders, and they were about to be reminded of that. The local policemen, firefighters, and many of the town's elite were part of a group called the Orange Order, so they weren't too happy to hear about the showdown with the showman. The very next day, dozens of men from the Order attacked the circus as vengeance. Stones were thrown and fires were ignited, prompting the fire department to show up, only to partake in the carnage.
Nah, that's insane. That's an insane thought to think about. Imagine your place come on fire, like your house on fire, and the fire department pulls up to beat your ass.
Sorry. After what felt like hours, the mayor finally stepped in to stop the mayhem. The riot stopped, miraculously, with 0 reported deaths. Despite the circus being reduced to cinders, the police did nothing. Why would they? They were in on it. 17 people were reportedly charged, but only 1 ever saw a conviction. The local Torontonians, or whatever they call themselves, didn't really like that response and called out the obvious corruption. To them, they just witnessed a bunch of the local elites destroy a circus unprovoked. The whole fiasco
Very much
turned public
unprovoked.
opinion against the Orange Order, and their political power was eventually squeezed from the area. There's
Nothingham.
fewer things worse in this timeline than the parasites that are scalpers. Scumbags that just buy up and
Yeah.
hoard relatively cheap in-demand products only to sell them at a profit once they forced market scarcity.
Man, I hate people like this. Bro, when I remember when I was trying to first buy my PS5, but I had 4 people on 4 different websites trying to hurry up and buy it. People were, and it was supposed to be a one limit. It was supposed to be one per limit. People had these bots that were like auto buying it. I was so heated when I couldn't get it.
So you're forced to sit back and watch as several sweaty, sad excuses for humans raid your local shelves for every last Pokemon pack while your child realizes that he's not allowed to have a fun hobby. But the concept of scalping itself is far from new. Back in 1766 in the town of Nottingham, England, many merchants were looking to turn some cheese into cheddar. Nottingham was an English economic epicenter thanks to the boom of the Industrial Revolution. Brand new factories meant brand new jobs, and brand new jobs meant that people were flocking to the cities to work. These workers more or less came from agricultural backgrounds, hanging up their plows to work with fancy and deadly machines. Well, with all of these farms shutting down, combined with an overall poor harvest season, the country of England was hurting for food that year. Supply was down, demand was up, so prices for wheats, meats, and treats soon ballooned into unreasonable territory. At the end of each harvest season,
So they was
Nottingham held their
stockpiling the
annual
food?
Goose Fair in October, a simple city gathering where townsfolk could enjoy a bit of fun while stocking up on food and supplies for the winter. One of the more shelf-stable foods at the time was cheese. Entire wheels could last a family a few months in these colder conditions. But attendees weren't about to shell out all of their shillings on inflated prices. What? Now you might be all, well, yeah, you just said that prices were up because of food shortages, and it's true, they were, but not this bad. Many marketgoers noted that the cheese prices just a town over were roughly half of what was being charged here. So clearly these merchants were being unfair at the fair.
Then go to the next town over.
But the truth was a lot worse than that. These merchants were buying the cheese in bulk, fresh off of local shipments. So instead of the
Wow.
regular cheese sellers bringing their products to the fair, merchant middlemen bought up all of the supply and resold the curds at marked up prices, pocketing the
Insane
difference.
work.
But this wasn't just limited to Nottingham. The merchants planned to sell those cheeses around the country, cutting off a critical supply of food for the locals. So the people got pissed and began to attack, surrounding all the merchants fronts and backs. They had one demand: sell the cheese here, but the merchants said no with a fuck out of here. And so the riot began. Roads were blocked, merchants were clocked, and carts were knocked over. If they weren't to be sold at a fair price, they would be stolen instead. Rioters began to loot any and all cheese shops, smashing windows and yoinking what wheels they could, throwing them out to the public so everyone could get their fair share. One of the merchants had a literal boatload of cheese and tried to set sail before being boarded. He quickly agreed to rioters' demands to sell the cheese for cheap, but his boat was still looted on principle. The riot
Oh,
got
nah,
so
bro,
out of
you couldn't
control
even
that a
quit.
regiment of the British Army had to be called in. They set up shop and fired into the crowd of looters. But of course, instead of hitting any actual looters, William Eggleston, a local farmer just minding his own business, got wanged by a few rogue slugs. The riot lasted for
Wow.
several more days, eventually dying down once the remaining Kurds made their way out of the city.
Pepsi
Remember
number
when companies
riot.
used to host special giveaways, find a golden ticket and win a big old truck, or be the millionth customer and win a lifetime supply of used toenail clippings?
Ugh.
Don't really do those anymore. And for good reason.
Wait, those are
Something
onions.
that the Pepsi Corporation would find out the
Are
hard way
they
in
onions?
1992. In order to hook new customers onto their delicious and nutritious sugary soda, Pepsi held a contest in the Philippines. The Pepsi Number Fever Contest. Bottle caps of Mountain Dew, 7-Up, Mirinda, and of course Pepsi would each have a number printed underneath them ranging from 1 to 999. It was up to customers to collect these bottle caps and wait to see what numbers were announced as winners of various prizes. These were either small monetary or free product prizes, but the grand prize was a whopping 1 million Philippine pesos. This
What that is in American dollars.
equated to about $40,000 in 1992, or
$40 and 40,000 1942. Inflation now, I'm trying to guess. That's probably around like, I think It's either 70 or 80,000, I think.
or about 92,000 in
90.
2025 money. This was, at the time,
90, 92,000. But the chances you finding it, you might have to spend like $15,000 in straight Pepsi till you get it.
equivalent to about 51 times the average annual salary in the Philippines, so it was a pretty big deal. Pepsi saw their monthly sales in the area balloon 40% as people scrambled for their chance at wealth. New prizes and winning numbers were announced each night on television and radio, and the people would redeem whatever prizes they won. The entire promotion ran from February into May of '92. By the end of the run, over 51,000 different prizes were awarded, including 17 lucky winners of the grand prize. But unfortunately, everyone's luck was about to run out, or at least to them, it would seem like their luckiest day of their lives. As a side note, when companies hold sweepstakes like this, they set aside a specific budget and plan out how many winners of each prize there will be to spend that budget. For the Pepsi Number Fever contest, it was $2 million. They had already made that back in the first few weeks of the promotion, but once the budget was spent, then the promotion was over. On May 25th, another grand prize winning number was announced, 349. Since this was a grand prize, only 2 bottle caps bearing the winning number were supposed to be in circulation. There were more. A lot more.
There was a misprint. Oh no.
Thanks to an oopsie in the manufacturing department, over 800,000 bottles were distributed
Ooh.
with the number 349 under the cap.
That's $800 million. That's almost $1 billion.
So, in theory, Pepsi was now on the hook for over $32 billion in prizes, almost triple
God.
what the entire
my
Pepsi company.
Yeah. Well, whatever Pepsi did, I would do the same thing. 32 million. Oh my God. 30. Ooh.
Was worth at the time. Fleets of Filipino fellas and fellettes flocked to their local Pepsi bottling plants to redeem their fortune, but were confused when they saw everyone else with the same supposed winning number. To make matters worse, the company retracted the number, correcting it to 134 the next.
No. Why did you correct it, bro? You better off just ripping off the Band-Aid, because now what if 900 people have cap 134?
Morning. All of the top Pepsi executives held an emergency meeting to decide a course of action. They agreed to eat into the promotion's profits and count it as a wash. But for 800,000 people, this meant that they could only forfeit about $18 a person.
Yo, imagine you spent like $3,000 in Pepsi products trying to get this cap to win like a fortune. And you finally get the winning number. You go in and they give you $18.
Nearly 500,000 accepted, but 300,000 did not. Thousands of irate individuals banded together, forming the 349 Alliance with the goal of boycotting Pepsi products and eventually receiving their promised prizes. But that wouldn't happen. Over the next several months, numerous small riots broke out, destroying dozens of Pepsi delivery trucks and endangering Pepsi employees. Unfortunately, an extremist protester lobbed a live grenade in a warehouse.
All right, now you wilding, because now you're killing people who don't even run the company. Like, they're just trying to do their job, right? That's wilding.
Popping 3 bottle plant workers in the process. Another device that was hucked at a Pepsi truck ended up taking the lives of a local school teacher and a 5-year-old girl.
See?
Yellow. Legal actions against Pepsi persisted up until 2006, where the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Pepsi, absolving them of any future liability for the contest. The contest was a good idea in theory, but it ended up fizzing out and falling flat. It's pronounced Palingopur, and it's ridiculous. Also known as the Eel Riot, this little event is quite the hidden gem in the history of Amsterdam. Let me introduce you to Palingtrekken, a rather curious Dutch pastime. It involves a bunch of your closest friends, a long rope, and a lubed up live eel. Your imagination.
Hold on, bro. Well, why'd you have to include the fact that the eel is lubed up?
Filling in the blanks a little bit there? Well, allow me to paint a picture. Freaky deaky Dutch dudes would spend summer afternoons attempting to grab a live eel from a rope draped across either a canal or trees, while standing in boats or on horseback respectively. Pull on the dangling devil and be declared a winner, but if you miss your swing, you'll end up losing more than just your balance. It was a fun Dutch tradition for hundreds of Dutch years, until the Dutch government, being the Dutch oven that it was, laid down the Dutch law. Deemed an act of unnecessary cruelty, the practice was banned in the mid-19th century.
Yeah, that I'm not gonna lie. I'm on their side, bro. What the fuck you doing? Get the fuck out the river, nigga. You standing on the boat looking dumb as hell, trying to grab a fucking eel you tied by his neck. Get the fuck out the water, man. Nah, I'm with the government on this one.
But that wouldn't deter the population from yanking their eels in public. One fateful day in July of 1886, a group of young labormen were looking to trekken some paling on the Lindelgracht Canal in the impoverished Amsterdam neighborhood of Jordan. A few local policemen caught the men in the act, being all, absolutely not, but like, in Dutch. One officer sprang into action, cutting the rope across the canal and putting an end to the game. So the laborers put an end to him.
Oh, come on, bro. Now you're wilding. You killed an officer just because you couldn't jerk off an eel?
The officer was dragged into a nearby cellar and had the ever-loving shit beat out of him.
Oh my
The
God.
other officers fled for backup, but this only escalated the situation. Deeming the act of cutting the rope more as an act of oppression rather than punishment, the young men rallied nearly the whole.
Mind you, all this so they can stand in the river and jerk off an eel. A lubed up eel. All this because he cut off the rope. He just cut the rope off. He didn't take the eel. He just cut your rope, and you took his life.
whole neighborhood, forming a bloodthirsty mob. They fussed about for hours, clashing against police reinforcements, but when nightfall hit, everyone kind of called it a day and went sleepy by. The entire neighborhood awoke the very next morning refreshed, but still fuming, so they armed themselves with sticks and stones to break some bones. They regrouped and stormed the local police station to vent their frustrations. They began to pelt officers with rocks, sticks, bigger rocks, literal garbage. Whatever they could get their hands on, it became a projectile. Knowing that peace was not an option, the officers called in military support. But even while staring down a well-armed army, the mob would not falter. The army decided to calm the rioters down with some live ammunition. Once the smoke had settled, 26 lay dead with 130 injured. But the eel was okay.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, they dumb as hell. They super dumb. All this over eel that they couldn't jerk off no more. You know, with that being said, that was the most ridiculous riots in history. Let me know how y'all feel about that down below. See y'all boys later, dude.
Get your hands off of me, wanna rest my